God message for you today. In a quiet corner of heaven, an angel sat on a cloud, his wings drooping, eyes filled with sadness. He had been watching over you for as long as you could remember, protecting and guiding you through the many trials of life. But now, something heavy weighed on his heart. He wiped away a tear, feeling the burden of what he had come to know. Behind the scenes, in the shadows where you could not see, there were whispers, plans, and conspiracies forming against you. Forces of darkness, jealous of your light, were gathering to disrupt your path. These unseen forces wanted to drag you down, to confuse your mind and steal your peace. The angel's sorrow was not just for what was coming, but for the pain you might face when you found out. He longed to warn you, to speak directly into your heart, to shield you from harm. But he knew there were certain battles you had to face in order to grow stronger, to learn, and to find deeper faith. He whispered in your ear as you slept, "Do not fear. Though they conspire against you, greater is the one who is for you. I am by your side even in the darkness. You are not alone. Though you might feel the weight of the world press down on you, the angel had seen your strength. He knew that with every trial, your faith would burn brighter, and the conspiracies would fall apart before the mighty shield of your belief. And so, while the angel wept, it was not out of despair, but of hope. Hope that you would trust in the divine hand guiding your life, no matter what shadows lurked around you. He knew the conspiracy could never steal what was truly yours: your purpose, your light, and your victory. The angel stayed beside you, his gaze fixed on your every step. His heart ached because he knew what you couldn't yet see: the schemes meant to distract, confuse, and lead you astray. He watched as subtle doubts began to creep into your mind, as challenges at work, in relationships, or within yourself started to pile up, leaving you feeling overwhelmed. Still, the angel didn't lose hope. He knew that within you was a resilience that no conspiracy could crush. His mission was not just to warn you, but to remind you of the unshakable truth: you are deeply loved and divinely protected. He could see how the darkness tried to isolate you, to make you feel as though you were facing these battles alone. But he whispered again, "You are never alone." With each tear that fell from his eyes, the angel prayed for you. His wings stretched over you like a shelter in the storm, his presence a quiet force urging you to keep your faith, even when circumstances seemed against you. He knew that God had already seen every plot against you and had prepared a way of escape. Every challenge was simply an opportunity for you to rise, not by your own strength, but by the strength of the one who holds all things together. Days passed, and the weight on your shoulders grew heavier. The conspiracies became more obvious, people turning against you without reason, unexpected obstacles blocking your path. You questioned, why me? Why now? But deep inside, a flicker of hope remained. A sense that even though everything seemed to be unraveling, something greater was at work. Then, in a moment of stillness, as you sat reflecting on the struggles of the past few days, you felt a peace that didn't make sense. It was as if someone had touched your heart, wiping away the doubt and fear. You could almost hear a voice, soft yet powerful, saying, "I am with you. This battle is not yours to fight alone." The angel smiled through his tears. He saw that you had heard the message. Though the conspiracies still swirled around you, your heart was beginning to align with the truth. No weapon formed against you would prosper. Even when you couldn't see it, the hand of God was moving behind the scenes, turning every plot for your good, every setback into a step forward. As you stood up, you felt stronger, more sure of who you were. You weren't defined by the trials or the conspiracies against you. You were defined by the one who created you, who called you by name, and who promised to be with you in every storm. The angel's tears dried, replaced by a look of peace. He knew that while the enemy had tried to conspire against you, you had chosen faith over fear. And in that choice, the conspiracies had already lost their power. "Go forward," the angel whispered one last time, "for you are never alone, and no plan against you will succeed when God is for you." As the days went on, the battles persisted. You could sense the tension in the air, the people who seemed distant, the unexpected struggles cropping up in areas of your life that had once been stable. It felt as if the world was conspiring to wear you down. But there was a shift inside of you, a quiet confidence that began to grow, nourished by the truth the angel had whispered to your heart. Though the darkness around you tried to cast its shadow, you carried a light that could not be extinguished. Each time doubt or fear tried to invade, you remembered the words that echoed deep within. "I am with you." And so, you began to approach each challenge differently. Instead of crumbling under the weight of conspiracies or succumbing to anxiety, you faced them head-on, anchored in faith. There was a newfound clarity, a deeper understanding that the battles weren't just random, but part of a larger plan to shape you, to refine your character and strengthen your spirit. The angel watched, his heart swelling with pride as he saw you step into your purpose with courage. He could still see the forces conspiring against you, but now they seemed weaker, less significant. They had lost their grip the moment you chose faith over fear. What the enemy had meant for harm was now being used to build you up. The angel no longer wept, for he could see what you had not yet fully grasped. The conspiracies were being turned into stepping stones. One evening, as the storm of life raged around you, you found yourself in prayer, speaking from the depths of your soul. "God, I don't understand why these things are happening, but I trust you. I know you are with me, and no plan against me can stand." The moment those words left your lips, something shifted in the spiritual realm. The forces that had conspired against you began to scatter, like shadows fleeing from the light. The angel stood tall now, his wings spread wide, guarding you as a sense of victory washed over your heart. You might not have seen the full breakthrough yet, but the war had already been won in your spirit. You had learned the secret. No matter what comes against you, when God is for you, nothing can succeed against you. As the days turned into weeks, those who had plotted against you began to falter. The very obstacles meant to harm you became opportunities for growth. People noticed a change in you, an unshakable peace, a quiet strength that radiated even in the midst of adversity. And though they didn't know the battles you had faced, they could see the victory in your eyes. The conspiracies no longer had power over your mind or your heart. Instead, they became reminders of a greater truth, that every battle you faced was allowed only to lead you closer to your purpose, to refine you into the person you were meant to be. The angel, now smiling, watched as you walked boldly into your future, no longer weighed down by fear or uncertainty. He knew that while the forces of darkness might still try to conspire, they would never succeed. For you had learned the greatest truth of all. You are never alone, and in every battle, victory is already yours. As time passed, you noticed a profound change in how you viewed the world. The struggles that once seemed overwhelming no longer held the same power. You had grown stronger, more resilient, and more aware of the spiritual forces at work both for you and against you. And through it all, you carried the quiet confidence that nothing could truly harm you when your faith was anchored in God. The angel, now a constant yet invisible presence, watched over you with a deep sense of peace. He had seen your journey from confusion and doubt to clarity and strength. The conspiracies that had once weighed heavily on his heart now seemed insignificant compared to the power you walked in. He had witnessed the divine plan unfold in your life as each trial had molded you into a vessel of grace, wisdom, and courage. But the battles weren't entirely over. New challenges arose, some even more daunting than the ones before. There were days when you felt the familiar pressure of doubt, when the voices of opposition tried to creep back into your mind, whispering lies about your worth, your abilities, and your future. And yet, something had shifted. Instead of reacting with fear or frustration, you now responded with faith. You had learned to recognize the pattern, the way darkness would try to distract you just before a breakthrough, how obstacles often signaled that you were on the verge of something greater. Each conspiracy against you was, in truth, a reminder that you were a threat to the plans of the enemy. One evening, while reflecting on everything you had endured, you felt a deep sense of gratitude. You realized that the struggles, though painful, had been necessary. They had stripped away your insecurities, refined your faith, and revealed your true strength. Without them, you wouldn't have grown into the person you had become, a person who knew, without a doubt, that they were never alone. As you knelt in prayer, you felt a presence near you. It was as if the angel, though unseen, was standing beside you, his wings stretched out in silent protection. You didn't need to hear his voice this time. You already knew the message, I am with you. God is with you, always. In that moment, peace flooded your heart, washing away any lingering fears. You had come to understand that no matter what forces conspired against you, they could never steal your purpose, your joy, or your faith. The trials you faced were temporary, but the victory was eternal. As you rose from your prayer, There was a quiet determination in your spirit. You knew that more challenges would come, but you also knew that every battle had already been won in the spiritual realm. You would face the future with boldness, armed with the knowledge that you were divinely protected and that no conspiracy, no scheme of darkness could ever succeed against you. The angel, now watching with quiet pride, knew his mission had been fulfilled. He had delivered the message, and you had embraced it. You no longer needed to be warned of the conspiracies, for you had learned to walk in a victory that no force could take away. And so, as you moved forward in life, the angel continued to guard you, no longer weeping, but rejoicing in the unshakable strength you had found in God. And now, every time a new trial arose, you could sense the presence of that same angel, not as a reminder of impending danger, but as a sign of divine protection, a symbol of the truth you now carried. Nothing can harm me, for God is with me. I am never alone. As the days passed, life continued to present its challenges. There were moments when the conspiracies around you seemed to intensify. Unexpected losses, sudden misunderstandings, and obstacles that seemed to rise out of nowhere. But now, each time adversity struck, you faced it with a steady heart, knowing that God's hand was guiding you through every storm. One night, a particularly heavy burden pressed on you. You found yourself awake in the quiet hours before dawn, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of a situation that seemed beyond your control. The darkness felt thick, and for a moment, doubt tried to creep back in. Is this too much for me? You wondered. The old fear of failure tried to resurface, whispering lies that the forces against you were stronger than before. But in that silence, you felt it. A gentle presence, like a warm breeze, enveloping your soul. You knew the angel was near, watching over you, just as he always had. This time, though, the sadness that once accompanied him was gone. His presence was now filled with assurance and strength, and you could almost hear his voice, not weeping, but speaking firmly into your spirit. This is not too much for you, because it is not too much for God. The burden may seem heavy, but you are not carrying it alone. You closed your eyes, breathing deeply, letting the truth settle into your heart. The situation hadn't changed yet, but you felt the burden lift, replaced by peace. It was as though the angel's wings were covering you, shielding you from the attacks of fear and worry. You realized once again that every trial was simply another opportunity to see God's faithfulness at work. In the days that followed, you noticed something shifting around you. The very people who had conspired against you began to falter in their efforts. Situations that had seemed impossible to overcome began to unravel, solutions presenting themselves in ways you hadn't anticipated. You saw doors opening where before there had only been walls. It was as if the darkness that had tried to ensnare you had no power anymore, because you no longer feared it. The angel, always near, watched with joy as you walked boldly into each new day. He had seen the conspiracies weaken, not because they stopped, but because your heart had grown too strong for them to touch. You were learning to rise above the schemes of the enemy, not by fighting them in your own strength, but by trusting completely in the one who fought for you. Then came a moment of breakthrough. A situation that had plagued you for months finally resolved in a way that left you astonished. What had once seemed like an insurmountable problem suddenly became a testimony to God's goodness. You realized that every twist and turn, every delay had been orchestrated to bring you to this moment, not just to solve the problem, but to show you how far you had come. As you looked back, you could see it clearly now. Each conspiracy, each struggle, had been part of a greater plan to refine you. You had been tested, but instead of breaking, you had been strengthened. You had learned that no weapon formed against you could prosper, not because the weapons weren't real, but because you had learned to trust in a power far greater than any force of darkness. The angel, now watching from a distance, smiled. He no longer needed to guard you so closely because you had learned to walk in your divine authority. The tears he had once shed had turned into tears of joy, for he had seen your transformation. In the end, it wasn't the conspiracies that defined you. It was your faith. The plans that had been meant for your harm had been turned into stepping stones for your growth. You had risen, not because the path was easy, but because you trusted the one who walked beside you. And now, every time a new challenge came, you faced it with the knowledge that you were never alone. The conspiracies, the trials, the battles, they were all temporary. But the victory, the peace, the strength you had found, that was eternal. As you continued on your journey, the angel would still be there, watching with pride and joy. You had learned to conquer fear with faith, and no conspiracy could ever touch you again. You were walking in the light of God's love, unshakable, unstoppable, victorious. As your journey continued, you found yourself moving with a new sense of purpose. Each day, you woke up with a fresh resolve, no longer weighed down by the worries that used to haunt you. The challenges that once seemed insurmountable now felt like opportunities, each one a chance to grow, to trust, and to watch God's hand unfold in your life. The angel, now standing back, observed your every move with quiet admiration. He saw how you no longer allowed fear or doubt to creep into your heart. Instead, you approached every situation, whether good or bad, with a calm assurance that you were guided by something far greater than the conspiracies that had once sought to ensnare you. You had been tested by fire, and you emerged not only stronger but also wiser. One day, as you walked through yet another trial, this time a difficult decision involving those you cared for, you felt that familiar weight trying to settle on your shoulders. But rather than being overwhelmed, you paused, closing your eyes, remembering all that you had learned. You prayed simply and quietly, asking for guidance, for wisdom beyond your own understanding. As you opened your eyes, you felt an incredible sense of clarity wash over you. The answer to your dilemma became clear, not because the problem had changed, but because your heart had. You had learned to listen, to discern the gentle whisper of God's voice amidst the chaos of the world. You no longer rushed to fix things out of fear, but waited, trusting that the right path would be revealed. The decision you made that day was not easy, but it was right. And as you followed through, you saw how everything began to fall into place in ways that even surprised you. What had seemed like a difficult and painful situation transformed into a beautiful unfolding of grace. The angel, still present, now watched with joy as your life became a testimony to the power of faith, patience, and trust. In the months that followed, your life took on a rhythm of peace, even in the midst of challenges. People around you began to notice the change. They saw how you carried yourself differently, how you no longer reacted with anxiety or frustration when things went wrong. They marveled at the calm confidence that radiated from you, even in the hardest of times. You didn't always share the full story, but deep down you knew the truth. It wasn't that the conspiracies had stopped or that life had suddenly become easy. It was that you had changed. You had learned to trust in something beyond yourself, and in doing so, you had become unshakable. One evening, as you sat quietly reflecting on everything that had happened over the past year, you felt that familiar presence again. The angel, who had been with you from the beginning. Though you couldn't see him, you knew he was there, watching over you with love and pride. This time, there was no sadness in his presence, no tears for the struggles you faced. There was only joy, because he knew that you had found your way. He whispered softly, as he had done before, but this time it was a message of celebration. You have overcome. You are walking in the light, no longer bound by fear, but free in faith. Tears welled up in your eyes, not from sorrow, but from gratitude. You had been through so much, but now you could see the purpose in every trial, the meaning in every moment of hardship. What had once seemed like overwhelming conspiracies against you had become the very tools God used to shape your character, to deepen your faith, and to draw you closer to his heart. As you sat there, you realized something profound. The conspiracies never truly had power over you. They were only illusions, meant to distract you from the truth. The real battle had always been within you, between fear and faith, between doubt and trust. And now you had chosen faith. You had chosen trust. And in that choice, you had won the battle. The angel, seeing your heart so full of peace, finally let go of the last of his worries. He knew you were ready to walk forward, no longer needing constant protection from conspiracies because you had learned to stand firm in your own faith. You were no longer just a survivor. You were a conqueror. And so, as you rose from your place of reflection, you carried with you a quiet confidence, knowing that whatever lay ahead, you were fully equipped to face it. The conspiracies that once loomed so large in the shadows had lost their power. The darkness had no hold on you, for you walked in the light. From that day on, you moved with purpose, with strength, and with an unwavering faith that no force, no scheme, no conspiracy could ever take away your peace. You were no longer the person who feared what might come against you. You were the one who had learned that God's hand was in every moment, and his love was greater than any challenge you could face. And as the angel watched you go forward, he knew, beyond any doubt, that you were walking in the fullness of your destiny, a destiny that no plot, no plan could ever steal from you. The path ahead was not without its twists and turns, but as you walked, you no longer stumbled. Each step you took was filled with certainty, not because you could see every obstacle ahead, but because you had learned to trust in the unseen. The peace within you was unshakable now, forged in the fire of trials and refined by the lessons learned in the depths of struggle. As time passed, you found yourself facing new opportunities, ones you had once only dreamed of. Doors that had long been closed now swung open before you. Relationships that had been strained were being restored, and the dreams that once seemed distant were coming to life. But you knew that these blessings were not just random occurrences. They were the fruits of faith, sown in the hardest seasons and now blossoming in abundance. The angel watched from a distance, no longer hovering protectively as he once did. He knew you had grown into your full strength. Instead, he marveled at how you carried yourself now, with a quiet grace and wisdom that had been birthed in your heart through every trial you had faced. Though the battles had once seemed insurmountable, you had learned the greatest lesson of all: that true strength doesn't come from avoiding the storm, but from walking through it, knowing you are never alone. One day, as you stood on the brink of a new chapter in your life, you reflected on everything that had brought you to this point. The conspiracies that had once felt so real now seemed like faint memories, like shadows that had been chased away by the dawn. You remembered how those early battles had nearly overwhelmed you, how the lies and schemes had threatened to consume your hope. But now, looking back, you realized that each of those moments had served a higher purpose. The trials had not been sent to destroy you, but to shape you. The enemy had conspired, but God had used every plot to refine you, to make you into someone who was not just strong but resilient, not just hopeful but deeply rooted in faith. As you stood there, looking out at the horizon of what was to come, you felt a sense of deep gratitude. You could see how every hardship had woven itself into a tapestry of grace. You had been guided through the darkest valleys, not by your own strength, but by a divine hand that never let you go. The angel, sensing your reflection, came close once more. This time there were no warnings to deliver, no tears to shed. His presence was one of joy, a quiet celebration of the journey you had walked and the victories you had won. He spoke to your heart, not with urgency, but with a deep and gentle assurance. You were always meant for this. Every battle, every trial has brought you here. Now go forward with confidence, for nothing can stand against you. You are victorious, not because of what you have done, but because of who walks with you. You smiled, knowing the truth of those words. You had learned that victory was not about the absence of conflict, but about the presence of God in the midst of it. Every challenge, every conspiracy had been met with divine strength, and because of that, you had not only survived, You had thrived. As the days unfolded, you embraced each new season with open arms. The struggles were still there, but they no longer had the power to shake you. You had been transformed by faith, and now no scheme, no conspiracy, no force could ever make you doubt your worth or your purpose. And as the angel watched you move forward into your future, he knew that his role had changed. You no longer needed to be shielded from the darkness, for you had become a beacon of light. The conspiracies had lost their grip because you had learned that the greatest battle is won in the heart, where fear is conquered by love and doubt is silenced by faith. In the end, the conspiracies had not defeated you. Instead, they had been the catalyst for your transformation. You were no longer defined by what had come against you, but by the strength and faith that had carried you through. And now, as you walked boldly into the next chapter of your life, you did so with the knowledge that you were not just surviving, you were soaring, carried by a power far greater than anything the world could throw at you. The angel, his mission fulfilled, watched with pride as you moved forward, not as someone who had merely overcome, but as someone who had been completely and beautifully transformed. You were now walking in the fullness of your destiny, and no conspiracy, no force of darkness could ever change that. Amen. Share this video if you love God. Subscribe this channel for more blessings.